Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, October 23, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live. Well, not just from Brooklyn, but from the Bellagio Hotel, the Raphael Conference Room. I am at the Mass Torts 2019 conference. Trial lawyers from all across the country trying all sorts of multi-district litigations involving corporate malfeasance, things like the opioids, human trafficking, and more. But also on this day, Trump, tailor-made for impeachment. Kurds given 6 days to evacuate their homes after Erdogan and Putin carve up Syria. Republicans block an election security bill. California facing blackouts as San Jose proposes a PG&E takeover. Bernie Sanders pledges to end whistleblower prosecutions under the Espionage Act. And we work, but Newman gets paid, as the co-working space lays off a couple of thousand workers and gives its exiting CEO $1.7 billion.
You know, I like the communal part of the kibbutz, but not the pay structure. That's a paraphrase, by the way. Not me just joking.
Meanwhile, Bojo gets a no-no on the Brexit vote.
Wow, Sam in Vegas.
Who knows what's next? And lastly, Zuckerberg testifies to the House on Facebook's crypto dreams. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Thanks for joining us, folks. I am in Las Vegas, as I do twice a year, and I attend this Mass Torts conference. Had a little technical difficulties this morning and a little scheduling difficulties, but we have at least a couple of guests coming by today. We have more tomorrow. Hoping to talk to people about new litigation about Juul, those things. Zantac apparently causes some problems. There is there are, I don't know if folks have remember in the past, we've interviewed people about C8, and this was a case that Levin Papantonio, Mike Papantonio, litigated against DuPont and basically caused that company to have to fold into Dow. I think it was. They were bought. Multi-$100 million settlement for this company just basically dumping a material used in the manufacturing of those non-stick pans. And they're supposed to burn it because it has like almost no half-life, like an incredibly long half-life. And instead they dumped it into the local river and gave 4,000 or 5,000 people all sorts of diseases, cancers, and whatnot. And out of that case, apparently, there has been another chemical that turns out to be highly problematic, involving the foam that they use for runways when they're fighting fires. And we hopefully will be talking to somebody about that as well. Perhaps some of the litigation that's happening with the Boeing Max 737. We'll see as it goes on. But first, let's just start with the impeachment. Yesterday, Bill Taylor, and if you go back and listen, I can't. When was it? About 2 weeks ago that we got the text messages, and we read through those text messages, and they were incredibly damning. And Bill Taylor, it was quite clear from those text messages the relevance that he plays in all of this. Bill Taylor was a career diplomat who was appointed acting ambassador to Ukraine after the Trump administration got rid of the first existing ambassador to Ukraine because she was,
Unfair.
I guess, unfair and not involving herself enough in the pursuit of Trump's looking for an investigation into Biden. And Bill Taylor is the guy who's sort of like, he's just not part of the crew. He's there. They seem to think he's going to go along with it. But at one point in the in the text messages he had with Sunderland, who is the hotelier who gave $1 million to Trump's inaugural ball or fund. I'm not quite sure where that money went, but he was the ambassador to the EU. He basically took over the Ukraine portfolio along with Kurt Volker and Rudy Giuliani, essentially. And Taylor, at one point in the exchanges, says, as I said on the phone last night, I think withholding security assistance to help with a political campaign is crazy. And then Sunderland was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. No one said the words quid pro quo. In fact, I just watched The Sopranos on the plane ride out here. The episode where Tony thought that his buddy was wired, and it turned out to be another guy who was wired. Mm-hmm. But it was a similar type of situation where Tony was like, yeah, sure, okay. I never said that. And Bill Taylor went and testified yesterday. All we have is his opening statement, which was released. But it's quite clear from that he, when he first got there, could not believe what was going on. And it took him a while to understand what was happening. But by the end, he realized that Giuliani, Volker, Sondland, and Rick Perry were...
Rick Perry.
Yeah.
Best people.
The best people.
This is what he says. He goes, Taylor lays out a timeline of Trump's interactions with Zelensky. This is the president of Ukraine. And the, quote, highly irregular channel of U.S. policymaking in Ukraine that included Kurt Volker, Sondland, Rick Perry, and Rudy Giuliani, who, I should remind you, does not work for the U.S. government. He works for the president of the United States as his personal attorney.
In his capacity as a simple country lawyer.
And the interesting thing about this is that, at least according to what we know from Taylor's thing, now, they are deposing people. And apparently this is the way that the first Benghazi hearings went. They depose people behind closed doors, then they open it up to public hearings, and which makes sense. It's the same way that you would do any type of prosecution. And according to what has been reported on Taylor's testimony, it seems like they were not even necessarily asking for an actual investigation. They were asking for an announcement that there would be, to basically, obviously, to as a way of hurting Joe Biden in the general election campaign. And so the quid pro quo is indisputably there. And you know this because, and do we have Mo Brooks apparently yelling? Did you hear about this?
No.
The
That sounds
the
good.
Republicans are now yelling about the process. Literally, I think Mo Brooks from Alabama was like in the hallway, like almost like did his own version of like a Code Pink protest, and and they are going to
No
argue
more emoluments clause. We
exactly
will bleed.
fake emoluments.
Fake emoluments. Stop the prosecution.
And the
We have it.
okay, yeah. Here is Mo Brooks. This is how you know the Republicans know they have a massive problem on this question of quid pro quo.
And this is how they are so stressed that somebody went to Donald Trump and was like, "You can't do the G7 in your frigging hotel, dude."
Right. That's
You
a
can't
bad
do
move right
it.
now, Chief. And but they know how bad this is, Bill Taylor is in this point. And so they're going to talk about process because they're very concerned with norms. And here's Mo Brooks.
Mr. Brooks, the opening statement says very clearly, this is what Bill.
The opening statement doesn't make any difference.
Let me finish what I'm saying. Let me finish my question. He says
You
very
should
clearly.
not be relying on it.
Why would you not be relying on
If
his
you were in a
public
court of
testimony?
law, if you were in a court of law, would you rely just on the opening statement of an attorney?
But let me
or
ask
the
you-
first witness
can I
called?
ask you what
or
he
would you
said?
have cross-examination? Would you allow rebuttal witnesses to determine, to explore whether the first witness's testimony was accurate or inaccurate?
I'm asking about the substance of what he said. He
That
said
doesn't make
that.
any difference. We don't know whether what he said is true or not because of the sham process that's being used.
There's the sham process.
Oh my God, he's aging the entire Republican caucus.
Yeah. And this is a big problem for them. This is going to be a big problem for them. And the next question is just simply going to be, how are the Democrats going to handle this? We see numbers on impeachment are up, all except for Trump's base, which is highly problematic for the Republicans. And this is, it's just a question of timing now and what other articles of impeachment they bring in. We'll get to those other clips in a moment.
Whoa, Mo, calm down. Sell it later.
Folks.
Doesn't look good.
It's nice to be here in the Bellagio Hotel, but the sad part is I don't have my calm and comfort blanket. It's true. I don't sleep as well. I don't sleep as well without it.
I 100% believe you.
That's just, I don't. And for you folks, there's no need to suffer through another sleepless night. Thank you to Calm and Comfort by Sharper Image. It is a weighted blanket that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep naturally. It's made with that super soft velveteen material. It's designed with high-density comfort fill, which mimics the soothing feeling of being hugged or swaddled, and provides exactly the right amount of weight to help relax your body. Meanwhile, the ThermoComfort neck and shoulder wrap uses clay beads to provide the perfect amount of pressure to relax the muscles in your necks and your shoulders. I have gifted one of those, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They like, if you're someone who likes to get massages, and you like pressure on your shoulders. I personally, I'm not a fan of that, but for me, the weighted blanket now is a must-have. I'm sleeping with the window open, keep it nice and cool. Weighted blanket. I fall asleep. I stay asleep, and the Calm and Comfort weighting blanket comes with 90-day anxiety-free best sleep of your life guarantee from Sharper Image. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to calmingcomfortblanket.com, use the promo code MAJORITY at checkout, and receive 15% off the displayed price. Again, that's calmingcomfortblanket.com, promo code MAJORITY. You can't put a price on a great night's sleep, so go now to calmingcomfortblanket.com, use the promo code MAJORITY. And as I have said in the past, hiring can be an incredibly slow process. This guy, Cafe Altura's CEO, Dylan Miskowitz, needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. He switches to ZipRecruiter. Boom. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. So you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for all business sizes. You can try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/majority. That's ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter.com/majority. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Okay, and now joining me, you can see on camera, and Jeff, if you could just move right over here, we get you in the camera's view here. Joining me now is Jeff Gaddy. He is an attorney with Levin Papantonio. And Jeff, I think we spoke last time I was here. Oh, here. I'm sorry. Let me get you. All right. Why don't you just try that one there?
Yeah, we did. We spoke about a year ago about the opioid stuff.
Okay. Sorry. Give me one more second. Okay. Give me that now. All right. So Jeff, I think we spoke a year ago about it.
We did.
Okay. And so give me a sense. You're working on the opioids. Just refresh everyone's memory as to what you're working on. What part of there's various litigations going on across the country.
Sure.
There's just a settlement in Ohio. I mean, tell us about what's going on.
Sure. So we represent several hundred local governments in litigation against the manufacturers and distributors of opioids. It's to kind of boil it down to its simplest terms. It's a supply and demand type of case. We allege that the manufacturers of opioids misled the doctor and patient community and drove up the demand for opioids by falsely telling folks that they were not addictive and that they were safe, and the distributors they were right there with the supply, in spite of duties that they had to be on the lookout for and report suspicious orders of opioids. They continued to just flood the market with these pills that has led to so much addiction and other consequences, death that we've seen with these. So that's the basis of the litigation.
So are there two sets of defendants here? The manufacturers, who include what? Purdue and...
Sure. So that's the Purdue, Johnson & Johnson, Endo, Mallinckrodt, a lot of these big branded and also generic manufacturers. And then on the other hand, you have the distributors.
And there's three major ones, right?
So there's three major ones that most folks, I'd never heard of them until I got into this litigation, but then you look into them and they're Fortune 15 companies.
Wow.
So they are very well funded. McKesson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen. And so they're the kind of traditional distributors. And then you have a lot of folks who you and I would probably just think of as pharmacies. Walgreens, CVS, Walmart. What these companies did was 15, 20 years ago, they realized that hey, instead of paying the premium for having one of these big three distribute us our drugs, we can go out, get our own DEA license, and just distribute to ourselves. So those folks have attempted to brand themselves as simply pharmacies, but they also have a distributor license, which obviously subjects them to the same duties and rules and regulations as the others.
And that's the key there, because once they assume the responsibility of a distributor, there are statutory obligations that they have that are specific to the distributors, right? Just explain that, because and at one point, one of the stories was, I don't know if this was about 4 or 5 years ago, they were lobbying hard to get those statutory obligations eased. Because I think they knew they were headed for a problem here.
You're absolutely right. So the Controlled Substance Act has been on the books since 1970, and it's been there for decades, where they have this duty to be on the lookout for and report anything that doesn't pass the smell test when it comes to orders of pills. Can be size, quantity.
Okay, so they're using data, and they have the functional equivalent, I guess, of actuarial tables for what they anticipate the usage of drugs are going to be in any specific region or wherever it is, distribution center they have.
What we've learned is these folks have data about data. I mean, they have visibility from the top to the bottom, and what they're charged with under these rules and regulations is utilizing that data to make sure that they're not supplying pill mills, to make sure that only legitimate prescriptions are being filled, and the allegations in the case are that these folks have completely missed the ball when it comes to their duties and rules and regulations.
Okay, and so that's basically, and so who are your plaintiffs? I mean, who are your plaintiffs in this instance?
So local governments, cities, counties, towns, boroughs, any local government, and a big one of the big calls to arms here was, kind of harkens back to the tobacco litigation, and there was a $247 billion settlement in tobacco. It was completely driven by the attorney generals, and a lot of that money went to fix potholes and build highways. And what we saw in this case was that the damages were really felt on a local level. It was the cities and towns who were dealing with their citizens who were becoming addicted, who were trying to fund treatment centers, and they just weren't able to do so. So represent hundreds of local governments who are fighting to get funding so that they can address the opioid impact locally and try to make a difference in their individual communities.
And this is, and the impact ranges from dealing with future addicts, or
Sure, it's all of the above. We talk about trying to gather funds to abate this public nuisance, this epidemic, and we talk about it very, very globally. Obviously, every location is different. We would never tell anybody how to spend any funds they recover for this, but education is a big thing. I mean, we've seen that with the tobacco, where the ads are finally starting to roll out from the tobacco litigation. So we think that's important, that you should be in the elementary schools teaching kids that the pills in their parents' medicine cabinet are just as dangerous as a needle, and if a heroin needle goes into their arm one time, it won't be the last. We think law enforcement and jailing. I mean, those infrastructures are so stressed by this crisis. So we don't think this is a problem you can arrest your way out of by any stretch of the imagination, but law enforcement, we've had a couple of instances where we've had law enforcement officers overdose on the side of the road searching vehicles because the fentanyl can be absorbed through the skin. And you have officers who are searching a car on the side of the road, touch fentanyl, absorbs through their skin, and they overdose on the side of the road.
Oh my God!
So thankfully, those officers have been revived, and we haven't lost one. But that should never happen. That should never happen. So making sure that all law enforcement officers have the resources to kind of appropriately deal with this issue. And then, of course, the biggest bucket would be addiction treatment services. So that it's needed. I have yet to be to a community, and I've been to hundreds of them now, working on this case, and I've yet to visit a community that tells us we have empty beds, we have space available. Nobody does. They're all maxed out. They all have waiting lists. They have people on waiting lists who overdose and die, and that's something that shouldn't happen. And that's what we're trying to fix with this litigation.
Okay, so what is the status now? How is this? Is this related to what's happened in Ohio? Or is that just two specific districts? Like, because they're. It feels like every other day we hear a different report of a different settlement.
Sure.
Maybe one just with Johnson & Johnson, maybe one that is just for specific counties.
So what you're saying is an example of the lesson that trial pressure brings about resolution. And as a trial lawyer and as a firm that tries a lot of cases, that's something that we know better than anybody. So what we're seeing here is we had a trial that was supposed to start Monday. I was supposed to be in Cleveland, not here, but Monday morning the case settled. There was several defendants that entered into a settlement, several others that were severed out and will probably go to trial in the next couple of months. But that's what we're seeing is all the local government cases, the ones filed in federal court, consolidated up in Cleveland, Ohio, in front of Judge Polster, and this was the first trial that we've been building up to for the last 2 years, and as I said, trial.
So how many
brings resolution.
plaintiffs? How many cities or municipalities, whatever it is, I mean, they towns? I mean, how many of those are participating in this settlement?
There's about in the settlement, it's just the 2 trial counties. So Judge Polster determined that Cuyahoga and Summit counties, which is where Cleveland and Akron sit, were going to be the 2 counties to go to trial first. So as that trial date was set, we saw the dominoes start to fall. You had INSIS file for bankruptcy. You had Purdue file for bankruptcy. As we started getting closer and closer to trial, Johnson & Johnson settled with the 2 counties. Mallinckrodt, another big manufacturer, settled with the 2 counties. And then literally at the 11th hour, we had the big 3 distributors, McKesson, AmerisourceBergen, and Cardinal Health, settle with the 2 counties. So
these 2 counties were suing, like, it sounds like a half a dozen players more.
I think the list was about 20 to 23.
Oh, okay. And so, and they're bringing this case against all those plaintiffs contemporaneously, or
against all those defendants? Yes.
Excuse me, those defendants contemporaneously.
Yes.
So how do the defendants organize themselves, or were you going to have, if you went to trial on behalf of those 2 counties, and there's 20 defendants, do they have like 20 different legal teams that are arguing this?
They do, and look, Judge Polster is a fantastic judge and has done a great job managing this case. And one of the things he did about 4 months ago was say we don't have room in the courtroom for 23 defense attorneys. So we essentially split the case in half, severed out approximately 8 to 10 of them. Said that'll be a second trial. And so then we moved forward with about half the number that we started with, and we saw the results of that. Once they knew that there was focus and attention on them, the settlement started to roll in.
And can you tell us what the numbers are on that settlement?
Sure, they've been publicly reported. So Mallinckrodt, which is a big manufacturer, branded and generic, paid about $20 million. The big 3 that settled on Monday paid a total of about $210 million is what's been reported there. Teva is a big manufacturer based in Israel, but they have some entities here in the U.S. It's been reported they paid about $5 million on Monday. So yeah, fairly substantial numbers.
So you're talking almost about $250 million between these 2 counties.
Sure.
And so, and presumably, they have a split in between, between them, and then this money goes into those various services that they need. Now, how these counties end up spending that money is up to them.
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
And Cuyahoga County's already announced that they've formed a specific task force to focus on exactly what the needs are in their community, which is what we've been preaching for the last 3 years.
Okay, so now, what does these settlements, do they basically establish benchmarks and an algorithm for the way that other counties, municipalities will ultimately, presumably, settle?
Sure. I mean, that's the whole purpose behind setting some of these early, what they call bellwether trials, to kind of test the waters and see what how a defendant values a case when it comes to settlement, or how a jury values a case. And obviously, I mean we talked about the numbers. They've been reported. They're significant. So the fact that these folks were ready to put that type of money on the table shows what they were concerned about as far as a jury verdict.
So how will that, and then presumably when these, we move down the line with these other counties and municipalities, it's some type of formula like Cuyahoga County had X number of people and had reported X number of ODs and has a budget of Y, and these many pills ended up in this county over the course of 15 years, and relative to the $125 million they're going to get, that's what sets the formula.
Sure. So there's a bunch of different data points you could look at as far as metrics for determining something like that. What we've kind of focused on is amount of pills, which you referenced, and we're actually looking at it in MMEs as opposed to just pills. So morphine.
MMEs?
Yeah, morphine milligram equivalents.
Okay.
So that's kind of how, you have a hydrocodone pill and an oxycodone pill. They're both just one pill, but the oxycodone pill is 50% stronger.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at is potency. So we're looking at MMEs going into communities. We're looking at overdose deaths. We're looking at diagnoses of opioid use disorder. So how many folks are addicted in the community, and those are the three data points that we've kind of focused in on the most.
And so presumably we're going to start hearing about settlements cascading over the next 6 months?
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. As I've said a couple times, trial pressure brings about resolution. In Cleveland, there's no more trial dates right now, so we expect there will be one roll out soon. If you remember, I told you about half of the defendants were severed out, so we do expect there to be a trial date for those folks that'll roll out soon, and we'll work those cases up aggressively. We'll prepare them for trial, and if the defendants make an offer that our client tells us to accept, then we'll accept it. But otherwise, we'll go and try the case, which is what we were prepared to do starting this week.
Now, are there other sets of plaintiffs out there that are pursuing other litigations? Are attorney generals involved in this anymore? Or?
Sure. So I think Nebraska is the only holdout. I think otherwise every attorney general has either brought a case or announced the intention of bringing a case and retained counsel. You have cases that have been filed.
Why
by
Nebraska?
hospital.
Is McKesson located in Nebraska?
No, they're a San Francisco-based company out in California. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in Nebraska, but for whatever reason, they've decided to stand on the sidelines so far. So yeah, you have hospitals that have filed cases trying to seek reimbursement for indigent patients that they've treated who've come in with overdoses and things like that. You have third-party payers who are filing lawsuits claiming that they were the benefits and risk of opioids were misrepresented to them. So it's complex. There's a lot out there. The local government cases and the attorney generals seem to be kind of leading the charge, but and. What happens when the Purdue, for instance, says we're bankrupt? Are they bankrupt? Are they protecting themselves? Where does a settlement, or where would a court order essentially? Where would that sit relative to the other creditors that they're getting bankruptcy protection from? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So they filed a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They've been very public about their willingness to reorganize, to spin the company off, to rename it, to use the bulk of any funds that they have available.
Is there any type of recourse in that situation? I mean, it seems like the idea that you could sue this company for doing what they did in marketing this and manufacturing it and having an obvious awareness that this seems like a really successful product, and it shouldn't have been this big. Right. And earning $1 billion more.
Well, let's be clear. It wasn't an accident. Right. It was as big as it was because of the actions that they took.
Of course,
it was everything was strategic. Everything was intended.
And then they just say, well, we're going out of business. All the C-suite, the Sacklers, they walked away with all the cash. The business is just a sort of, presumably just sort of like some type of shell, right, essentially. And they're going to restructure. They're just going to they're going to change their name and move out of town.
So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. There was recently a temporary stay entered, meaning kind of a pause on all the litigation against both Purdue, their affiliated entities, and also the Sackler family. And the court gave everybody until the first week in November to kind of decide what type of discovery would be permitted onto the financial status of both the company and the Sackler family. So those negotiations are happening now. And obviously that's a huge question. How much money did because it's a private company. They don't have these public they don't have these public filings. They don't have the E3s.
Can you go to the bankruptcy court and say you can't allow them bankruptcy protection or?
So there's a lot of different vehicles available. I think that if these negotiations come out favorable to us and we're able to get the transparency that we think we're entitled to, then we might be satisfied with that. And that's what we want to know. We want all the cards on the table, and we want to be able to see the full picture before we enter into negotiations. So that's what's happening now. Why would
they agree to do that?
Well, I think they know that the judge is fully aware of the entire situation. He hasn't been living, in a box for the last decade. So he knows the history. It's very public. He knows about the crisis. And so they know
they're
that.
just satisfying. Ultimately, they're satisfying the judge. And for the judge to be satisfied, both parties need to come and say, look, we've made an agreement. And if they don't satisfy the judge can get more onerous about what.
The judge was very clear that the stay he put on any litigation against them was temporary.
Okay.
And that was that he harped on that several times, that it's a temporary stay. And I think that if the Purdue and the Sacklers had their listening ears on, they heard that, and they knew that they need to come to a fair outcome by the first week in November, and allow everybody to see
just how much money they've walked away.
Exactly.
Profiting off of the abject misery and suffering they've caused. Hundreds of thousands of people across the country?
I have no quibbling with that number at all.
Yeah. Wow. Is there anything is there anything else that we should know about it, or?
So, we're all geared up. We were ready to roll with trial this week, and then when the settlements happen, we're kind of press pause for about a day, and now we're already hitting the ground running when it comes to the second trial case. We kind of have what we're calling track B up in Cleveland.
You're from Florida.
Absolutely.
And you thought that you were going to be in Ohio for the next 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
And now you're in Florida.
Fortunately, Judge Polster was pretty good about putting reasonable limitations. So I was going to be home by Christmas, but yeah, absolutely. So we were expected to be up in Cleveland this week and for the next several weeks, as we put on this case against these folks. So
Jeff Gaddy, Levin Papantonio, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks,
really
Sam.
Interesting stuff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Anticipating a. Okay. And. Or. Okay. We'll have another guest is going to be joining us in just a moment. Let's look at this clip as we're talking about. And I think we're going to see this. We're going to see the attempts by the Republicans, by the Trumpistas, to the way that they're going to be able to deal with impeachment, or the only way that they have is through process, or simply saying, we have no quibble with the facts as you've presented them. It's just that what makes you think it's wrong to do this? And here is Matt Whitaker. He is the former acting Attorney General. I don't know if people remember, he was the one who stepped in after Sessions, and then everybody said, you can't have this guy be your Attorney General.
He had some type of hot tub business. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if people remember it. I think was it like a multi-level marketing thing?
In retrospect, I think I would have rathered that idiot as opposed to Bill Barr, who is
without a doubt
significantly more intelligent, but equally, if not more, evil. But here is Matt Whitaker explaining his theory of the case to Laura Ingraham.
I really go back to that. They never saw him as legitimate. The insurance policy of Peter Strzok failed. Mueller failed. and now they're on to the next thing.
Well, and he's remember these global elitists, these careerists have made promises to and have set in place a world establishment that operated a certain way. And President Trump has asked questions like, why do we do this way? Why don't people pay? Why doesn't Germany and France, why don't they pay 2% into NATO? And these kind of questions, which again has completely upset the apple cart, he is being punished for this. And again, I'm a former prosecutor, and what I know is this is a perfect time for a preliminary hearing, where you would say, show us your evidence. What evidence of a crime do you have? I mean, the Constitution, sort of abuse of power is not a crime. Let's fundamentally boil it down to, the Constitution is very clear that this has to be some pretty egregious behavior. And they cannot tell the American people what this case is even about right now, because they have to do it in secret.
Yeah, and I'm reading this Bill Taylor opening statement, and my first reaction was anything that's 15 pages, single space. It's like someone who has to put their resume on 2 or 3 pages. That's never someone you want to hire, by the way.
Nerd.
Okay, first off, the idea that presidential abuse of power would not be an impeachable offense. I mean, it's not a specific offense. It's a category of offenses that you would impeach for. I mean, that's the whole point. Is literally you have abused your power as president.
No,
therefore,
that's what the global elites would have you believe.
Yeah. That's the old world.
That's the old model.
Careerist right there.
Yeah. How many pages is your resume, Sam?
To be honest with you, I don't know that I've ever had a resume. But with that said,
that's an alpha move.
It is sort of stunning that they can only rely on the fact that it's single-spaced and 15 pages long, as opposed to talking about any of the substance in there. In other words, we've got a guy who is so detail-oriented, and Taylor apparently took copious contemporary notes, as apparently
because he's a tryhard.
He's just trying to impress people. This is something apparently like career diplomats do all the time, and I think he was particularly sensitive to what was going on, and decided to take these notes as a way of protecting himself. And the idea that this would be the way that they're going to impeach, it's like the ACA, they did the same thing with the Affordable Care Act. Like, it's 100 pages long. Who needs a bill that's 100 pages long? It's that type of thing. But that's a tough sell.
Globalist diplomats took notes. It's a new world.
You can't believe any testimony that has been typed out single space.
Let me ask you a question. You're going to trust somebody in a criminal proceeding who took notes about the crime? Please.
Meanwhile, the rats are really desperately trying to scurry off the ship, I think. And God knows, right, exactly. God knows what is happening in the Pence home. Yes, Mother. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time, Mother. Here is Mike Pence.
There's a lot happening in the Pence home.
Yeah, here's Mike Pence, also on Laura Ingraham, talking about how, like, he had no idea about any of this, but I stand with the president.
But there's no question that when President Trump said we were going to drain the swamp, that an awful lot of the swamp has been caught up in the State Department bureaucracy, and we're just going to keep fighting it, and we're going to fight it with the truth. I mean, the American people can read the transcript of the phone call the president had with President Zelensky, and they will see there was no quid pro quo. And with regard to Ukraine, we were standing strong with Ukraine against Russian aggression, where the last administration was only sending them blankets. We're sending resources, we're sending missiles, we're going to make it possible for our ally in Ukraine to be able to defend themselves and restore peace.
Were you ever uncomfortable with Giuliani's role in kind of getting involved in some of this? I mean, it's not against the law.
My involvement with Ukraine was all directly from my conversations with the president and, frankly, my conversations on the phone and in meetings with President Zelensky. And what I can tell you is that throughout all of that, we were focused on ensuring that the United States was standing with Ukraine for its territorial integrity against Russian aggression, and that we were supporting and encouraging Ukraine to deal with years of corruption and calling on European allies to do more to support the Ukrainian people.
So, in other words, I didn't do anything that the president didn't directly instruct me to do. And so I wasn't involved in any of this.
Laura, you'd probably be familiar with the Eichmann defense.
Yeah, exactly.
You in particular would probably be very aware of a certain trials that happened.
Yeah, I had no idea what was happening. And I have to say this, too, about Mike Pence, that in the event that we do get some type of impeachment and he becomes the president and has to run again, I find it hard to believe that people are going to be able to watch him talk for more than literally 60 seconds. The guy looks like he's on the brink of crying every time he says something. It's very uncomfortable.
Much more comfortable. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but Pence would be obviously better to run against than Trump. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I think so. And you know, all the concerns that people had a year or two ago about a Trump administration, I think we have had largely a Trump administration. I mean, excuse me, a Pence administration. We have the judges that Pence wanted. We have the entire agenda from the EPA to the USDA, the administrative state destruction. I think we largely have had the Pence administration during this time. But joining me now.
Get that message to Trump. He'll be fired immediately.
Exactly. So back here in the conference, Mass Torts 2019. Joining me now is Carissa Phelps. She is of counsel with Levin Papantonio. Carissa, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Would you just step in just a little bit here? Thank you.
Yes, a lot of background noise.
Yeah. And just going to bring you down just a little bit. So, okay, you are working on human trafficking.
Anti-human trafficking, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us about, are there plaintiffs, defendants? What?
There's so many. I mean, there's so many people that we have not gotten in touch with yet to represent that need to know their rights. That's where we're at right now. And we know that we have clients that are signing up, that want to sign up, that as soon as they're educated just a bit about what their rights are, they're able to go forward and file some claims against hotels that really knew and should have known that they were harboring sex trafficking, that they were allowing it to happen. Other companies that were also helping to arrange it and profiting off of it through websites and other means. And financially, the people who are financially supporting, child pornography, child sex trafficking, kind of same groups of individuals. And all of those people that make it possible and make it profitable for sex trafficking to happen, that's what we're going after. After 10 years of doing advocacy myself on the ground level and realizing we just can't rescue every single victim all the time and offer them all the services that they need, we have to stop making more victims.
Okay, all right. So let me just go back here and we'll work through that. So the main defendants are hotel chains or specific hotels?
Yeah, I mean, you see brands like big brands that are out there, and some of them run and operate and own their places, their organizations. Some of them franchise them out and try to say they have no liability because they're franchised. But they're putting their brand on that, and they're
So
doing
are
a lot
we
more
talking
control.
like? I mean, can you say who the defendants are? Are they like
Sure.
what brands? Yeah, like no. Tell
I mean,
us.
well, Motel 6
Right.
is a big one, and that's owned and mostly operated by G6 Hospitality, which is owned by a private equity firm. Pretty much investments are made through pension funds. So when you track the money where it goes from, it's kind of interesting because it's a full circle of these investments. These investment managers are putting money into organizations where the people's retirement funds who they're investing
Yes.
are actually either their children are being hurt at these motels, right? Or law enforcement, they're going in trying to help and battle this problem, and they don't realize that it's their retirement dollars, their money actually funding this activity by being they don't
investing,
realize they're
right.
owners of this as well, in terms of that. So
okay, so let's take Motel 6, but I imagine there's other chains, obviously, and we can get to the franchisee a question, and I wonder if the National Labor Relations Board, their ruling in regards to like McDonald's, does that have any sway? Do you know what I'm talking about? The relationship between franchisees and franchisors, does that have implications in this at all, or?
I mean, I think that you might have to show that somewhat they had some activity going on, but the issue with the motels, not unlike the fast food industry, is that a lot of the people work there for a very short time. Like these employees, the maid services, even the general managers, it's like they're there and they're gone. And so really, who holds liability in that case, right? Who's the responsible party? Is the larger brand. It is.
Okay, and so how did they? What is the theory here that they knew? That they knew or should have known. And maybe before you tell me what they knew or should have, what was it that was taking place? I mean, what specifically?
Sure. So when traffickers use hotels, and I consider traffickers either buyers, actually the people that people call Johns, right, to try to humanize them, people who purchase sex, that go in and rent rooms for the purpose of assaulting someone, and in the case of children, child sexual abuse, child sexual assault. When they rent those rooms from the motels, they're giving them a financial benefit. So that part of it is where they have their liability, is they're taking money from people that they know are about to use their room for this activity. And somebody is hurt, right?
And how do you establish that they know?
That they knew or that they should have known? Because of the number of, sometimes it's the number of police calls, but oftentimes police stop responding. It's actually pretty sad. The worse that it gets at a motel location, the most rampant areas of sex trafficking, they'll stop responding, and that mostly staff doesn't want them to respond sometimes because it takes a ding. The hotel the motel will take a ding or get a fine or be at risk of being shut down or be at risk of being criminally held liable from the city attorney's office. So sometimes the calls are not made to law enforcement that should be, and then sometimes they're ignored. You have multiple reports that come out of it, police investigations, trafficking cases where specific locations are named again and again.
I see. So someone is either other guests at the hotel or
you
people
can
live
go
in the
on
neighborhood?
TripAdvisor and pretty much put in prostitution or trafficking and other types of crimes, and you'll see if a motel or hotel. So they are aware that this is all going on.
So it is at least primarily a function of the criminality that's been found there in the past.
And that people are being hurt. I mean, we're not just talking about bags of drugs, which are harmful. We know that, right? That if we were seeing a drug den going on, we would be appalled, and we should be appalled. But we're talking about children being raped again and again, over and over, and there being information that gives knowledge, really. I mean, really gives some actual knowledge that this was happening, and that they're ignored. They're considered, the children that are out there, disposable by these companies, and the companies have made profits, and the children, if they live to be adults, if they get that opportunity to live to be adults, live with immense pain, aren't able to trust.
Right.
Don't go on and feel safe in the world, right? And then imagine seeing all these Motel 6 or other branded motels and hotels and these lies they tell about how safe they are and that they're family friendly and that they're a good place to be, and hearing that if you've been victimized there repeatedly.
Now you started in activism that was a function of having been a victim yourself.
That's personal. No, it's a very personal story because I tried to get totally away from it. I went to school, I went to college, I was a math major. I was so far away from trying to think about my past. And when I went to law school, I was focused on business law. I wanted to figure out how to make sure that capital is used in a way that really helps, right? Like we can use capital in a way that can promote social good. And so that was my focus. And when I came out of law school and business school with the JD MBA, I went in back to the streets where I had been kidnapped when I was 12 years old. I went back to the places, and it was still happening almost 2 decades later in the same places, rampantly. And pretty much all I could see being the solution at that point was a bulldozer. I mean, we need to just have these properties taken out of these communities and plan safe communities with as much destruction that has happened in these neighborhoods for as many years as it's gone on. You really need to invest in that much more, right? You have to really make it the best type of place. So I attempted to do that back in the areas where I had been trafficked, where it was still happening.
Now, where was this?
In Fresno.
Fresno, California.
Fresno, California. Yeah. And unfortunately, the whole crisis happened, the financial crisis happened. We weren't able to raise the money we needed to really buy. At that point, I just wanted to buy the properties and just take them down, right? So I went into just community, neighborhood activism, raising awareness, because a lot of people didn't understand what the issue was. I had a county supervisor in Fresno County tell me that every community needed a place where you could buy sex and drugs. And to my face. And that was the attitude. And that is the attitude in many communities, that as long as it's kept over there and it's away from me, right? And we don't think about, though, what drives it and the profits that drive it. And that's what we're really trying to think for the plaintiffs.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your story? Or is
Sure. No, I wrote a book about it, so
okay.
I'm pretty open about it, and it motivates me. I think that's the important part, is it motivates me to do what I do. I know that I got off the streets for a purpose, for a reason, and when I was there, I met people, I saw things I was a part of. I was, myself, like I said, kidnapped, assaulted, sold.
You were kidnapped, and were you living in Fresno at the time?
So I was considered an out of control youth at 12 years old, a runaway. I had some unaddressed traumas that had happened when I was 11 years old and younger, and because of that, and because of a lack of counseling and resources and education, where I lived in a small town called Coalinga. The recommendation and advice that my mother was giving, Coalinga, California, in Fresno County, the recommendation and advice my mother was given was to take me to juvenile hall and drop me off, which a lot of kids that happens to them. They go into the system then, they go into group homes, they get recycled through group homes, and for chronic runners who are traumatized, they just end up back on the streets. Then somebody picks them up, says, and this is what happened in my story, right? I'll take care of you if you take care of me, with full intention of keeping me at a motel and me being that person's sex slave at 12 years old. And because it happened to me, I know how true it is, right? And even like when I finally got out of it, when I got to be able to get my education, get back in school, I had missed 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. I went back to school, graduated high school, went to community college, went to college, and I thought to myself, I'm going to write checks to programs that help kids in another country that this happens to. I did not realize how rampant it was, even though it happened to me and I knew other girls that were out there. I didn't realize how rampant it was and how it had gotten not just the same, that it stayed the same, but it had gotten much worse.
And is your story like typically how it happens in this country, that it's kids who are falling through the cracks
Anyone could be a victim. I mean, we say it's definitely an equal opportunity destroyer. It can reach anyone, any household, any age group, any gender as well. And so I particularly was vulnerable, and there'll be vulnerabilities that are preyed upon, like being, someone people are not looking for. Even though I was missing, I was a runaway, I was reported missing, nobody was really looking for me. I wasn't a milk carton kid, right? So that leaves some vulnerability. No one will know. And it's how serial killers actually choose their victims a lot of times, is if they are considered sex workers or prostitutes and they're not going to be looked for.
How did you get out of that situation?
So I had been taken from one person to another, which often happens. Like, you could either be thinking that you're going to be getting something better. So I went with someone else who was saying he would get me out of it. He was more violent, hurt me more, held me, and was actually probably taking me to murder me when we were pulled over by a law enforcement officer who recognized me as he saw me that I was out of place in this car. And unfortunately missed that there was another 15-year-old girl next to me. She did not get any help. And my help was being arrested and taken to juvenile hall and spending 30 days in juvenile hall. And that was my escape from that trafficker. It didn't mean that trafficking was over, unfortunately. It continued. It continued until later in my life, and I was able to finally turn things around and go to, like I said, get back to school at 15 and start to see a brighter future for myself.
Those 30 days was the beginning, because then you became aware of what was going on?
No, I'd say it got worse after that 30 days.
Well, so then how did you get...
So I ended up getting in more and more trouble, crimes, gangs, partly for protection too. More sexual assaults, more trafficking happened, because once somebody knows that you've been a victim of prostitution or trafficking, then you become a target, actually more of a target for it, again and again. So that happened. I was targeted. And then when I was in juvenile hall for the longest period was 6 months, and I met a counselor he was a very positive influence in my life. He's still in my life today, who told me I had potential. He allowed me to write a journal. He got me counseling, therapy, like the whole mix of things that I needed. Encouraged me to have a relationship with my mother, and helped me to really heal in a way that didn't just immediately rescue me, because that's not what happens, but it started. That was like a pivot point where it started, that I had a new message I could play in my mind, which was, you have potential, instead of the other messages.
So is the dynamic for obviously, it's not true for everybody, but is the dynamic for kids who are in that situation that it's not necessarily that they are physically kept from leaving, that it's just that they don't see any other options.
It could be either
to their life.
Yeah, it could be either. I mean, you could have that physical, you're trapped.
Right.
I mean, especially imagine as a child, you're 12 years old, you don't drive a vehicle, you can't get out. If I go out of this motel, even if he opens the door and tells me to leave, I'm thinking, okay, there's somebody worse waiting for me out there.
Right. You just don't know.
Yes. So you have that element of being trapped. Which I think is almost a physical barrier to getting out of it. And then you have the emotional and mental pieces of it, that you don't trust people. Clients that, were raped by police officers, assaulted by police officers who they thought were going to help them. And so that's not the majority of law enforcement that's out there. And I work closely with law enforcement, so I don't want to paint that picture. But it happens, and it has happened. And so...
Wow. And so what... I guess, so when you look at something like Sesta Fosta, which is a little bit off topic here, because I do want to go back to, how you're establishing claims against these courts. But with Sesta Fosta, from your perspective, like what was your perspective on that legislation, which I should just tell people was it basically prevented the advertising of sex workers in magazines or online or
websites. Yeah. So websites had kind of a free reign with the Communication Decency Act, oddly named CDA 230. allowed websites and hosts of websites and designers of websites to not be liable for anything that people post on their website.
Right.
And they interpreted that very broadly, the courts did, very, very broadly. So it was just basically immunity. For the people who were making the money off of the activities that were happening, the most money off of it, they were immune. And so FOSTA SESTA took that immunity away. And I think it really pissed people off. It has pissed people off, right?
But my understanding is that some activists are like, this is problematic because this is one of the ways that we track and help.
I think that narrative's being paid for, and
really,
yeah, I do. I think so. One of the things that I'll talk about later today is Soros Foundation and Open Society Foundation that has put billions in dollars into planting a narrative that says that the websites and that sex trafficking itself is not sex trafficking, that there's sex work, that they're empowering, and there's opportunities to empower sex workers through commercialization.
Hold on one second. I think we're having a little bit of problem with our connectivity. Are we there, guys? Okay. All right, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Didn't see.
It's okay.
So, to be clear, the Soros Foundation.
Yeah, and the tech industry. I mean, we've pissed them off. We've taken away a huge treat that they've had for a very long time, right?
Well, why would the Soros Foundation?
Oh, okay. So the Soros. So there, there's a narrative that they want to push that people who have been arrested for being victims in sex work they need a voice. I've been giving that voice. We have a voice. We've been trying to give a voice to that. I just said I was arrested as a 12-year-old victim. That shouldn't have happened.
Right.
And I've been working against that for a very long time. What's happened is that's turned into we shouldn't arrest the buyers. We should allow pimps or managers to be able to do their job of selling people. And this full decriminalization argument has come out of the Soros Foundation. They've been behind a lot of the other full decriminalization arguments in other crimes, like around marijuana and other issues that they feel that should not be criminal. Actually, some of the people that are funded by him and some of the research that comes out says that property crimes, like if someone breaks into your home, shouldn't be a criminal act.
So just to be clear, in terms of sex work,
which I don't think exists, sex work itself. But
you don't think it?
I mean, I think you need big quotes around sex work because the dynamic and the power differential of somebody who's offering money for that piece of you, that part of you, is unequal. It's just unequal. It's unequal to an extent that doesn't make it a fair bargain at all for the person that's being purchased. So I don't consider it work.
Okay. I mean, I think that is, the perspective. I mean, I think there are people who think sex work should be legalized and that having a regulatory structure will be the best way to protect people who are trafficked and who are,
Which creates more victims, actually. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's all right. Because I just want that out there because I'm the perspective of some of the folks who are against SESTA FOSTA feel that this is the only way to track what's going on for victims. How else would you find victims? Or I guess this litigation is part of that. Is like we know already where they're at, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, we know where they're at.
I mean, do you have a sense as you pursue this litigation, like, how do you establish damages? Like, how do you peg a figure on this? And is the idea that you're trying to reach people essentially like yourself, who have been victims and are obviously not currently victims right now, but need to get out of the system before they basically say we have a claim against the hotel companies that knew this was happening in their properties and just allowed it to continue?
and took profits for it. Yeah. So it's been a long road. I started telling my own story in 2006, and at that time I was uncertain about what my beliefs were around sex work, around any of it. I really didn't know. All I knew that kids as young as 11 years old were being arrested and charged with prostitution.
Right.
And I knew that was wrong. I knew that from my own experiences, and I knew that from going and sitting with the youth. Many of them were in foster care or group homes or probation. They were kids that didn't have parents except for the state. We were their parents, and we weren't doing a good job. So my advocacy has been around bringing awareness. Probably like the first 5 years of the advocacy work I've done has been bringing awareness for child victims of trafficking. For and part of my focus at that point was on Backpage early on. I mean, I was focused on the fact that this was happening. It was happening rampantly. I'd have young girls tell me, well, how could it be illegal? It's out there in the open. They really believed that. They didn't believe that it could be illegal. They thought they were partaking in something that was accepted, and it was being accepted at that point, largely in society. So if we ignore something, it's like the broken window theory,
Right.
kind of, right? If we ignore it, it gets worse. It gets much worse. So, and for them to start internalizing that, because it's open and out there, somehow it makes it okay that I'm a victim, means that they're going to be trapped in that for so much longer. Much longer. And so once we've seen services and programs now being built up because of the awareness and because there's some funding coming out for services finally, and then those services have to get mature and know how to deliver those services and learn and get evidence from what works and what doesn't work. Then you start to see and start to be able to measure.
And those are services who are geared towards kids who are trafficked. So because I think I think my conception has largely been like, society's not aware of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And it's like some type of rescue mission. You come in, you see the kids, you bring them out.
It's the Hollywood version.
And the end of the story. This is really more about kids who are in a system are not aware that they're being victimized.
Yeah.
Until they get older.
Yeah.
Because they're 12 and they just...
Right.
And so when you talk about something like Backpage, do they look at Backpage and say like, oh, I'm being advertised, so it must be fine? Or do they have
when it was...
Would a victim at this point be aware of like Sesta Fosta? Would just the idea of it...
helps prevent some of it. Yeah, it helps prevent.
They become aware like, oh, this is illegal. I'm a victim.
Yes. That's what it helps. And that's where it helps. But it was a huge ask to go to the tech industry or to the web, infrastructure of internet companies that were profiting off of posts and wanted to maintain zero liability and say, can you police yourselves, right? Can you go ahead and start doing the right thing? Can you not allow this to happen? It wasn't going to happen. And so it did take a huge, and wake-up call to say, no, it's not going to happen anymore. There's going to be liability. And you see that has pushed it to other places. It's still in the open. I believe that a lot of the trafficking still happens out in the open. You have websites like Seeking Arrangements and Sugar Daddy where it's happening, and there'll be lots of disclaimers. You have ways
there's presumably dating sites.
There's, which I think are actually far worse than some of the other ones. But then there are places where it's just social media, right? It's just social media, but that these traffickers target certain accounts and certain people and hit them up regularly, right? And are basically fishing for victims. I mean, they get out there and they go on and befriend people. I had a young woman that as soon as she turned 18, was told, oh, come be in music videos in New York, come be a part of this, and name drop some people they worked with, had some photos on the webs, on the social media site that they were contacted through. And then before you know it, she's taken out, out of state from across the country, from California to New York, and then told, bitch, you're going to be mine, and you owe me money now for being here and for me getting you here. And that's how, I mean, these arrangements are set up. It doesn't have to be necessarily an open site. It's still happening out in the open.
Right. How, are there syndicates of traffickers
that work together?
Yeah. I mean, like, how is this organized? Is this is this a function of organized crime? Is there a...
So there are various types of, I mean, yes. Yes. So you can have everything from where the businesses, even the hotels or the hotel managers are involved. You could have gangs that are involved and are profiting off of trafficking. That's happened multiple times, in multiple cases where gangs have worked together to traffic and have that as a source of funds. You have even rival gangs that work together to traffic, to increase trafficking in the market of trafficking and increase funds. So yes, I mean.
And all right, so how will you establish ultimately if you find those victims, like as you say, as services ramp up and organizations get in contact with start to have some type of regular contact with victims, this litigation is an opportunity for those services to say, like, we can get you a settlement essentially that will allow you to go and leave, provide you with the resources to be independent, to restart your life.
And there's a hurdle when you're talking with organizations that provide services, because they have a particular set of interests for the clients, and litigation is not always easy, right? One of the goals that we have is eliminating the statute of limitations.
Right.
Why should anyone ever think, oh, I can get away with this criminal activity that's hurting other people if it just has to be that they don't come forward for this many years?
And I imagine they're state by state.
Mm-hmm.
What are the statute of limitations on?
Well, the federal one is the one I'm particularly thinking of, is for the Traffic Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, the TVPRA. Right now is 10 years. So that'll be something I'm going to be looking at, and I've been talking to people who are going to propose some new changes to that, where at least let's not start that 10 years until someone realizes that they've been a victim, because to put somebody through that while they're in the middle of going through seeking services, getting help, is really difficult. I mean, that's going to be some of our clients. Some of them are still minors. Some of them, parents are outraged, like with the Backpage cases. I mean, parents were outraged and went and sought counsel because of that. So we'll hear from parents, we'll hear directly from the youth. I mean, not unlike the opioids. I mean, we should be hearing from the counties. The counties should be saying, hey, we know that these companies are profiting off of this, and that it's our kids that are in our care. They're in foster care, right? They're in our care, and we have to absorb all those costs of getting them help and services, which may never happen for them, right? And so we may hear from them as well. But it is difficult for that initial connection to happen, to say, I'm valuable.
Right.
I have rights. Or my daughter who was murdered at a motel, right? I want to fight for her. I want to bring up that memory again. I mean, that's difficult to ask people to do. And we want to be there for them during that whole process.
So where is it in the process at this point? Like, you've identified defendants, I guess, presumably?
Yeah.
You are looking for plaintiffs, and do you have a timeline?
I kind of have two strategies myself. Okay, so we have the big brands that are out there that we're going to probably get the mass torts going. I mean, that is our goal. Is we're here at Mass Torts Conference. I mean, it's pretty obvious. That's what we want to see, a large number of victims recover. And that's only going to happen through this type of litigation. And I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about learning about mass torts, and that's an opportunity to go forward in that direction, because that's how things are going to change, is through that. Then you have the small motel operators throughout California. We'll have hundreds that this is their main source of revenue, is from being involved in this. So I've got to think about that strategy a little bit different, because now we're not talking about a corporate brand, but we're talking about adding up all of these places where they've been harboring sex trafficking for decades and getting away with it. Some of them not under a brand, right?
Right.
So there's kind of two avenues in the hotel motel industries that I'm thinking about: mass torts, and then individual claims that victims can have. And maybe we have dozens of victims against one or dozens of defendants in those small motels.
to what extent is there a pursuit of legislation that would be the functional equivalent of Sesta Fosta, but for other entities that are profiting off of this?
So,
like, why isn't there a federal statute that says if your motel has been the site of three criminal activities over the course of 5 years, or
there's a great argument for that. I mean, you probably know, like we know that hotels and motels have this increase. They have basically a higher duty of care for the people who are coming onto their property, who they're renting rooms to. So how in the world could you know that your hotel is rampant with crime, with kidnappers, with people who potentially are rapists, murderers? How could you know that and keep that door open? Really? Right. I mean, it should, and the industry standard isn't there yet in terms of policing themselves. Is not there yet. They're starting to do education around human trafficking, but we've seen for the last decade things be on the books, and they are not doing things differently. When
motels when traffickers use motels, are the kids there for 24/7, and people are coming in to buy their services?
Yeah, so one of the things that you might see is that there'd be a number of people throughout the day who are unrelated coming into that same room to sexually assault or rape that person. If the motel was even vaguely vigilant about it, it's fairly easy to identify what's going on. And the sad thing that I've heard is, this is one of the smaller motels, but they had cameras on every door. They could see every door. Every door. And the children thought that was to trap them, to hold them there. They didn't see the cameras, because the cameras would see the people coming in and out all the time, right? And they didn't do anything about that. So the kids assumed they were being watched.
Oh my God.
And that they weren't allowed to go in and out.
What was your reaction around the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing? What was your sense as someone who obviously now 10, 15 years working on the side of trying to help victims, having been a victim? Do you have a sense of that scenario?
I just hope it doesn't. I hope we don't ignore it just because he's dead. I mean, what he has done will have an impact forever. I mean, really, it has an impact on the lives of the people that he harmed.
Right.
Generationally, it goes through generations after that. The number of people that participated with him that haven't been held accountable yet for the harms that they've done to those same children that he hurt, that he trafficked, is appalling. And just the amount of time that went
unaddressed.
I mean, we knew what happened. He went to prison but got released on a program where he was out every day, victimizing people while he was in prison. The fact that we condoned that for so long we need to look at ourselves as a society and say, what else are we missing? Right? What else are we missing? And it should be an indication and a measure of us. How kids are treated should be an indication of how we are doing as a society. And we did bad in that case. And we're not the only ones, in the world that are not doing well in this. And there's no magic wand to get rid of it. But we have to address every case vigilantly and not just slap people on the wrist for buying, for procuring, for offering, for selling. And that includes every level that profits off of this.
Chris Phelps, of counsel with Levin Papantonio, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. Where can people go? Are there websites that you recommend or organizations that you recommend for people to get more information about
this?
Yeah,
if somebody needs resources or services, the human trafficking hotline, which is 888-3737-888. That's how I memorize it, 888-3737-888. And that is the line to call, no matter if you're in need of services or if you're a service provider and you want to let people know that you're out there providing services and you want to be vetted and be on that line, then call them and get on that line. There's also a text way that people who can't call can reach them by text, and that's Be Free, which is 823-3733. That could be text, and you could text info or help to that line. And on the website, National Human Trafficking Resource, nhtrc.org, you can look up state by state what's available in your community, in your area. So that's the primary one that I would send people to.
And is there any type of activists who are pursuing legislation along this? Or?
Yeah, and they have a whole policy page for it. So again, if you want to get involved locally, you can see where your state is, what they're doing, how they're ranked is on Shared Hope International website. But Polaris has a start to all of that information, and Polaris is the National Human Trafficking Resource Center. We'll have all that information.
All right, Chris Phelps, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Sam.
All right, folks, we're going to head into the fun half. Wow. So,
yes,
we're going to be talking just amazing story. We're going to be talking to other attorneys tomorrow about various product liability issues and other cases. There's been, over the years, some devastating stories that I've heard here that are really disturbing and horrific. And, you know, it's interesting to, and maybe we can talk about this more in the fun half, but the perspective, I think that, we've talked about when it came to Sesta Fosta in the past, it's hard to get a sense of what the best way to approach these things are. I don't necessarily agree with the idea that there's no such thing as sex work. There are sex workers who I think are, at least to my understanding, that people who make a choice as an adult to do that kind of work. But I guess, different people have different perspectives on it.
Do you think maybe, I don't know if I'm up. Do you think maybe it's, I don't know. I think, you and I both could use to talk to plenty of people with, like the guest today of, Jesus, I don't even want to say I don't know what the right word would be, but people who know more than us. But I think...
victim.
Yeah, well, certainly victim, but I'm also, a victim, but also an expert.
Right.
But I think it seems to me that a term like sex work is maybe too all-encompassing because it can be used to describe potentially way too many things, and we need to start kind of disaggregating what exactly we're talking about here, right? Like but at any rate, yeah.
Let's play one more clip as we move on. We've been talking about impeachment. Here is Eddie Glaude on MSNBC talking about impeachment. And again, 2 weeks ago we had the text messages between Bill Taylor and Sondland, who is the EU ambassador and was picked by the Trump organization. The weird thing is that they brought in Taylor. It's almost like these guys, there was this corrupt cabal of Sunderland and Volcker and Giuliani and Perry, but they also needed some expertise. So it's almost like they couldn't help but bring in a career diplomat. And of course, this Bill Taylor, and they're going to attempt to impeach this guy's credibility, but I think they're going to have a tough time.
What language they speak over there, Bill?
Well, I think it's really going to be like, so Bill, you're the type of goody-goody who writes copious contemporaneous notes, and I see you only use single space. I honestly think it's
that's what's now. I'm talking about in the beginning where they're just like, I think we need someone. What do they speak? Crane over there?
Right.
Hey, Bill,
exactly.
get over here.
We need somebody
We're planning something.
But here is Eddie Glaude in the wake of the reports of what Bill Taylor has testified to, which I think, like I said, we were talking 2 weeks ago, we're pretty clear from the text that was his disposition. But here's Eddie Glaude.
Dan Balls in his column today in the Washington Post made it very clear. He says the question of whether this happened is now settled. Mm-hmm. The issue now is how the president explains it and what Congress chooses to do about it. So you're right. Something has changed. The smoking gun is here. The evidence is clear. Now we have to assess what will the Congress do, and I think that's where we are. So something has shifted. I think you and David are right. Something has shifted. The question now is, what are the next steps?
And that is the question. We'll talk more about that maybe in the fun half. I should remind you, you can say goodbye to sleepless nights. Thanks to Calming Comfort by Sharper Image, the luxurious weighted blanket that's made with super soft velveteen material and high-density comfort fill that mimics the soothing feeling of being hugged and relaxes your body. The Calming Comfort weighted blanket comes with a 90-day anxiety-free guarantee from Sharper Image, and right now our listeners can go to calmingcomfortblanket.com. Use the promo code MAJORITY at checkout to receive 15% off the displayed price. Again, that's calmingcomfortblanket.com. Promo code MAJORITY. You can't put a price on a great night's sleep. Go to calmingcomfortblanket.com. Promo code MAJORITY. All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break and head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, Kyle has been a monster, an absolute monster on updating the new app. If you updated it a couple of days ago, update it again. Has all the features that you want in terms of like pausing and returning to the same place when you're playing the podcast. You can find the AM Quickie on there. You can search the index if you're a member. Check it out. You can go to majorityapp.com to find the iOS and the Android versions and subscribe to the AM Quickie. You can do that on any of your podcast feeds. Today is Wednesday. Last night was Tuesday. Michael, what the hell went on there?
Party. Artesia Balthrop came through, talked about Chile, Lebanon, Chicago, and how the media covers different types of protests and what the different protests today are about. Why Hong Kong is about preserving important liberal freedoms in some respects, and maybe Ecuador, Haiti, Lebanon, Chile about economic freedom in a actual human, not libertarian sense. Talked about a whole bunch more, so I'll keep it brief. I recorded an interview I'm incredibly excited about and proud of with Adolph Reed, which is going to go up to patrons today. They'll get an early peek at it before we release it publicly in a couple weeks. Patreon.com/TMBS. Michael Brooks Show on YouTube. Snag your tickets to Philly. The link's on the website.
Jamie? Is Jamie there? I can't see on the camera.
She's not, no. But
Okay.
check out the Antifada, folks.
And Matt, I presume you're there?
I am here. I'll be doing the Salem witch trials for a future Saturday Literary Hangover episode. So we're going to be talking about cotton and increased mather. We're going to be talking about inequality and a commercial versus a secular society fighting through the church, and gender and inequality. So check that out, folks, on Saturday.
Oh, and folks, don't forget, we're building a glossary of things that you hear on the show that you just feel like, I don't get what they're talking about. What is this? Why does Michael do a right-wing Nelson Mandela impression? Where did that come from? Things like that. If you want to know,
it's like apartheid.
Send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Put in the subject meme or memes, 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 And we will include it in our glossary so that people can follow what the hell we're talking about half the time. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck 'em. Almost has what?
Almost
says what? Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
All right, folks, not going to have any calls today, but we'll be taking IMs throughout the show. About an hour ago, Michael's volume was low. That's okay. Apparently, we have full-on QAnon ads on our YouTube channel. Who runs QAnon ads?
I have no clue. That sounds great. I knew about the Epoch Times ads, and those that's Falun Gong.
Right, that's the Falun Gong.
Yeah.
I mean, I would presume if QAnon ran ads, they would be not so anon.
Right.
But Sam's Tinder profile. Hey, babe, swipe right, and let's start a class on action. A square.
There's a
Kyle
lot
is
of
a
commitment
genius.
to that bit. Okay.
Kyle is a genius, but can we please move the logout button to the left side panel? Wow, Sam, the Mad Court behind the Mad King gave nothing left to commit crimes openly and say, so what, get over it. Not expecting his base numbers to move, but overall numbers are moving a lot. This is over the past last night, I think it was. I go around, I try and talk to lawyers to see if I can find cases for to interview people about. And one of the attorneys is an incredibly knowledgeable guy about politics. It's pretty rare you come across people who you're talking to who, like, you can say, I don't know, I mean, just any reference to politics that we talk about over the course of a show, and they're like, oh, yeah. We had some disagreements about politics, but it was but very knowledgeable. And we were talking about impeachment and the question. He is of the mind that McConnell is going to have a vote, and that that Rehnquist had taken the impeachment hearings incredibly seriously with Clinton. In fact, I had forgotten this, but Rehnquist wore, and maybe Matt, you can find a picture of this and put it up. He wore like a special Supreme Court robe, like a special version of it. Wow. That was like, I can't remember what it was, like embroidered and like really, he took it very seriously.
These people are so embarrassing.
There's a little bit of insanity, but I think in that. But see if you can find that robe, Rehnquist's robe during impeachment. And he is of the mind that Roberts will take it seriously. And I am, he had one that had special stripes on it. I think it was.
We got it up on screen.
And
oh my God.
Yeah, no, it was the special robe. And I don't know if that is just like the Chief Justice robe or what, but maybe that was.
It's like when the Bulls wore white.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I still contend, because the question is at this point is, how are the Democrats going to roll out impeachment? I think they're going to, if they're smart, they're going to slow walk it. Ro Khanna was on MSNBC this morning saying that he's hoping that they will have a vote by Christmas. I am hoping that they don't, but I think we're going to see. They're going to continue to depose people essentially, and then they're going to start to have open hearings, and they have got to put the maximum amount of pressure possible on the Republicans in the Senate. Because you have people like Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, Joni Ernst in particular, Cory Gardner, arguably Sally McMaster in Arizona.
Maybe.
And if Mitch McConnell allows a vote, the vote that those 5 senators takes is going to be highly problematic for them, because these are all senators who will attempt to project that they are somewhat independent from Donald Trump, and that's going to be very hard for them to pretend that they are. And excuse the lighting here, that's going to be very hard for them to pretend to when they literally vote to protect him in the context of an impeachment hearing. So you need the idea that the Republicans are complaining that this is not public. Wait till it becomes as public as the Democrats realize now that they can and need to do. You're going to have Republicans crying about how public it is. Like, why are you throwing this in our face constantly? And that's what we're going to see. Quite convinced of it. And if the Democrats are even remotely aware of how this is going, that's what we'll see. Let's take a couple more IMs, and then we'll play a little more. We got some more clips here. Jill Aya. There was a Progressive Voice clip where, I can't remember his name, he played a clip from your show where Michael and you were kind of disagreeing on whether or not Michael was a co-host or not. A lot of people were
progressive. What a little prick.
A lot of people were upset in the comments because they thought this was silly and unnecessary, but I found it really funny.
It's both.
Especially how serious and his commentary was on it.
Wait, what side did he come out on the right side of it with me obviously as a co-host or what?
We're going to have to
We're going to need to do a response to his response to our response.
Yep. Right. Robin Reno, I think we've all overlooked some very problematic things in the corn pop story just because it's so stupid. But by his own telling, this is Joe Biden's story about how he was working at a pool and he had to go out and tell some black guys I can't remember what it was. He had to tell them, like, you can't horseplay in the pool. I can't remember what it was.
It was about how he made an emasculating joke to Corn Pop and then later sort of apologized to Corn Pop, but like showed him that he wasn't afraid of him.
Yeah, he had the balls to call him
he called him
Olympic
like a female swimmer.
Esther Williamson.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it was.
And
okay, but by his own telling, the most charitable version of this story is that he's hair-shaming a black kid into leaving the pool. In reality, the rules he's enforcing is that white kids and black kids don't swim together in Wilmington in 1962. Remember, he's a dozen years from still not getting busing. Another 10 years out from being to the right of Reagan on mass incarceration. And he's using words like thug 10 years before the Clintons dreamed of having prison slaves at the governor's mansion. It's tough to believe he ever asked a white guy to wear a swim cap for pomade. In fact, I asked my black boomer mom if she ever remembered white men having to wear swim caps because of their hair product. None. She remembers plenty of bullies at pools. This story actually had saliency for her. That's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden, particularly on the democratic embrace of the prison industrial complex and racialized appeals, was a pioneer. And there's a clip we played, I don't even remember on which show, from '88 when I was hosting. And I mean, I don't know about Reagan, I believe it, but there's definitely one of him attacking the first Bush very much from the right on essentially not locking up enough nonviolent drug offenders.
Okay, well, bless me, Father, if I have sinned.
He's still up in the polls.
Yep.
He's still up in the polls. And
did you see the one that came out this morning?
No.
I mean, yeah, there was a good Emerson poll that came out yesterday that actually showed Bernie surging and only 2 points behind Biden, with Warren dropping to third place, which was a nice poll.
National poll?
That was a national poll.
Nice poll.
These are national polls. Then the other national poll that came out today showed Biden having the biggest lead since April over the whole field. And I didn't even read down below that because it was so depressing. But these are national. These are national. Yeah.
It's also worth looking at who they're polling, which is registered Democrats.
Oh, definitely.
And I think there was something like 5 point. I think I saw that poll, and it was like a 5.8% margin of error. But I think like the real, and I'm sort of recording this, but we're gonna have to wait to Iowa to get a real sense of what the shape of this race is, because there is a theory that the Bernie campaign has that they are operating on, which is that they're going to be bringing in new voters and voters who haven't participated before. And that means that the polls according to their theory, may not be capturing who these voters are and are not modeling properly for what the outcome is going to be. We shall see. In the meantime, that's why it's, the best thing for you to do if you're interested, and obviously if you do this for any candidate, but is get out and volunteer and go and do the work.
We'll find out in Iowa whether or not Bob Iger needs to jump in to save
he
the
guy from?
Isn't he the Disney guy, I think? Disney CEO?
I just read something today, too, that the guy from Dick's Sporting Goods may jump in
Sure.
as a Republican.
Well, there was that New York Times Martin piece, Jonathan Martin piece of like, I think these people are just having breakdowns, but the names that, Biden's not as strong as they want. They're terrified of Sanders and Warren. And so they're interested in the savior options of John Kerry, Mike Bloomberg, and Hillary Clinton. Just like, wow.
That's
okay, guys. Sure.
Can I campaign while windsurfing?
Right.
Really looking forward to having an IM get sent through the new app. Hey, it worked. Not to be too pedo, but I recall you reported on the Zantac suit 2 tort conferences ago.
That's, by the way, can I just say, that's definitely a meme that we should always pre-explain.
Right.
So before you send an email, Sam very happily used the wrong word in a segment. He said pederast instead of pedant.
Tomorrow.
It was amazingly funny, and we've had fun ever since. But I just, let's always restate
That's all that signifies.
Yes.
That'd be great. Sorry, just lining up another guest for tomorrow.
Oh, we like it. Little behind-the-scenes work.
Yeah, there you go.
Tort operator.
There you go. We've just case closed.
I like Sam at Torts.
We will. I mean, the idea on the Zantac suit is to get updated to see where these suits are. We will see. Rehnquist had gold stripes down his robe because he saw it in Gilbert and Sullivan's show. Oh yeah, he added those. There is no like impeachment robe. They don't keep that in a special closet.
Yeah, not with that attitude.
Yeah.
And he said, that's not a joke. They had an operetta called Trial by Jury, and one of the characters is the learned judge. The Arthur Sullivan Memorial in the Embankment Gardens in London is well worth checking out. Wow, that's nuts.
What the
Pajama
hell
Boy.
is wrong with these people?
Sam, what do you gamble when you're out in Vegas? What do I gamble? Money. I play craps and blackjack. And
For the casino.
Exactly. I was going to say, like, if that's me behind the register, I'm pulling money out and giving it away. Sam, I'm curious about how you think the Senate will avoid a conviction vote. Good luck on your torts exam. I think they're going to try and claim that there is some type of procedural thing where they don't recognize the validity of the bill. I mean, it's the only way that I could perceive of it would be, that somehow they don't recognize the validity of the bill that's sent to them, the impeachment, the articles of impeachment. I don't know how they would avoid it. But if you had asked me 4 years ago, how could they not have hearings I understand there's a constitutional obligation for them to do this. But I don't know. Donald Trump is calling up saying that the emoluments clause is fake.
Totally fake.
The way I would imagine it would be like this. the McConnell claims there's some procedural problem with holding the vote because it has come from Congress, from the House, incorrectly. And Bill Barr gets up and says, I concur. And we have a memo from the Office of Legal Counsel. And then the House, then I would think Pelosi would go to the Supreme Court. And, this is the thing, is like, I'm having an argument with this lawyer whose politics I share. But one of the things that I have noticed over the past 20 years, and leading up to Bush v. Gore, and knowing this too from coming from a family of lawyers, is that lawyers believe in the rule of law. They believe that law wins out, that ultimately that you can have more politicized courts than others, but ultimately like John Roberts will recognize, and the Supreme Court will recognize that the Constitution holds. And then I just say Bush v. Gore. And I think, I basically go around to these lawyers here and say, like, okay, fine. You think John Roberts is going to do that? What's plan B? Right? Because the legal profession has to sort of pick up the pace here. Steph from Chicago.
George Washington had a desk for the presidency and one for business.
There you go.
Did you see that?
What's that?
He was ranting yesterday, and he was great because he was doing his oh yeah, Obama got a Netflix series. He never talked about that when he was in the White House, I'm sure. And then he goes, and they say George Washington, he was a businessman, needed a desk for being president and a desk for business. Two desks.
And what is that? Is that a tweet that Trump put up there?
No, what is this?
Yeah, this is a new tweet by Trump. He says that the Never Trump Republicans, though on respirators with not many left, are in certain ways worse and more dangerous for our country than the do-nothing Democrats. Watch out for them. They are human scum. That was 8 minutes ago.
Shout out David
And
Frum.
this is, this is also a threat to any Republicans who come out and acknowledge what they're seeing in these hearings. And he's worried about bleeding actual Republican lawmakers. And this is a threat to them.
Can we just say, Susan Collins, just pack it in. You don't want to go through this. Just retire.
I don't know about that.
I don't know. It's not a crime if the president does it. Nixon.
What he did was an absolute crime. However,
what was the word in the ad they used? Unfortunate, that she said over and over again.
Right.
It was unfortunate that he's committed multiple felonies, but it's also unfortunate that the Democrats made it partisan.
Did you guys mention the Tim Pool? Did I mention that?
Sam, multiple times I've explained that I genuinely found it deeply embarrassing and uncomfortable to watch. The giggling fit that he had before he hit you with the Marvel movie reference was
Seems like the best thing that's come out of it are the reaction gifts that you've granted the MR community on Twitter.
Very powerful eyebrow energy.
Yeah, but there was a lot of it was a weird experience.
Yeah, do you remember what it was like when you came in the office the day after to talk about it?
What did I say? I was just like,
You're very muted. Yeah, I asked you, and you're like, I don't know. Just wasn't the same.
It was very fun.
It was not. I didn't have the unadulterated joy that I usually have in those situations.
What was it about that? Because you're known for enjoying arguing with idiots in all forms, whether they're callers or other personalities. What made this one different?
I think that there is not just bad faith. Like, if you have to argue about, the validity of a Fox News poll, and he's unskewing these polls, and then talks about how he doesn't believe in polls, but he only looks at the aggregate polls, and then he looks at the aggregate polls and finds that I was 2 points under, where impeachment was, and then okay, but whatever. And then when someone brings up, a Marvel comic to say that utilitarians are they're
usually the bad guys.
The best part about it was within the first 20 comments on his video, I was called a dirty Jew 2 or 3 different ways.
He's a goddamn dirty Jew who's not open to an open exchange of ideas.
Honestly, it's this is one of the reasons why I hate Jews. Yeah. Because of the way that Seder acted.
every time I've tried to have an honest and open and charitable exchange with a goddamn dirty Jew.
Right. The Jews never.
Jews don't listen.
Oh, pretend you haven't seen that Marvel comic movie. Classic Jew move.
That you made.
Oh my God, that's the best part though. And they're just like, oh my God, everyone's seen the Marvel movie. It's like such a state of projection. Like, oh yeah, and he didn't know who Thanos was. What a lie.
I was just gonna say, I'm thinking of changing my Twitter bio to just I am Thanos.
I definitely think you should do that.
All right.
We need more people to die for the population.
But I totally vote for Sam instead of some like we need half of the population, like some type of like computer animated like muscular alien. It's just Sam.
MR.
We need to be efficient.
I'm not voting for any candidate in the general election who does not call for the death of half of our population.
MR fans, get on it. Put Sam's face in the purple Thanos head.
I am not going to choose between two candidates who are the lesser of two non-massive genociders.
I've had enough with compromise. I'm a utilitarian. People need to die.
God.
Should we do this Yang thing?
Which Yang thing?
Well, what is the Yang thing?
He's not for getting rid of private insurance because it's too disruptive now.
Oh, wait, I thought he was into disruption.
Wait, what happened? He changed his mind on private...
Or he's clarifying.
He's no longer into disruption, it turns out.
Yeah.
Let's hear this.
On Medicare for All, page 8 of Senator Bernie Sanders' bill eliminates private insurers. Does that mean that you do not support the Bernie Sanders Medicaid for All bill?
I support the spirit of what Bernie is trying to accomplish. I do think that outlawing private insurance in a very short period of time is a bit too disruptive, and I would not do it.
On Medicare for All.
Andrew Yang sucks. Andrew Yang sucks.
But wait a second. Now there's so much wiggle room in there. Like, what does that mean? Like, I applaud the spirit of this very specific proposal. I wouldn't do it too soon. I think there's a lot of, like, he's wiggling quite a bit, but is clearly trying to sort of make himself more palatable to, the centrist constituency. I mean,
he's a public option guy. I mean, it's always been. I don't know. I mean, I remember his people used to freak out and say he supported Medicare for all. Maybe that was on his website for a while, but I think it's been pretty clear for a couple of months that, like Buttigieg, his definition of Medicare for all is not Medicare for all.
Let's play this. This is obviously a incredible story that does not seem to have any resonance in this country. I think partly as a function of what's happening with the Kurds and Turkey and Syria, and just that it's almost too terrifying to contemplate on some level, because the Trump administration has proven that I don't know what I would call it, the lack of diplomacy, or just sort of their diplomacy is a function of, like, if I don't have a hotel in Kashmir, why would I care? And here is Ilhan Omar in the House Foreign Affairs Committee bringing up the issue of what has been happening in Kashmir.
Part of the reason I asked and part of the reason I emphasize the context of the larger PGP project is because I think the situation in Assam is as bad as Kashmir, if not worse. And I think in both cases, the impunity we have seen for crimes against Muslims under the PJP was warming for such worse things to come. In Assam, almost 2 million people are being asked to affirmatively approve their citizenship. As my colleague and the chairman said, there have been official statements to the effect that no Buddhist, Christian, Sikh, or Jain refugees need to worry about their status. And so this is a clear anti-Muslim program. And I'm sure you've seen the same reports that the Indian government is starting to build camps in Assam, presumably to hold those who are unable to prove their citizenship. This is how the Rohingya genocide started. At what point do we no longer share values with India? Are we waiting for the Muslims in Assam to be put in those camps?
This is, she's talking obviously about a province in India, but it appears that Modi's project is not just limited to Kashmir.
Yeah, it's not, but it does basically. I mean, you're talking about people who've lived in India for generations, who are Muslim, who are basically demanding all of a sudden paperwork to establish their citizenship. And it would almost be like, I mean, it would be actually directly analogous to, I don't know, like someone going to Matt's family and saying, well, you say you've been here for a while, but,
right.
Prove it. Yeah.
Hold the fort there, Michael, for a minute, because I have to, I've got a slight technical thing, and then we'll be back.
Do you mind if I play some sound while you're...
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Let's... I think this is worthwhile. I want to play this Shaq sound. The whole way to understand what's happening in the NBA is really as a speech issue, as corporate censorship. China wants the same treatment that Israel gets, as an example, in terms of never being interrogated on its rights record. And Hong Kong, there's complexity to that situation, but the bottom line is that people making an affirmative statement for protest being shut down by corporate censorship is a market problem, and it's a fundamental problem. And even people like LeBron, who I like a lot, have had a lot of respect for, the way he went out ahead on this was pretty bad. And here's Shaq, who maybe he's got some right-wing political instincts, but props to him for this.
As American people, we do a lot of business in China, and they know and understand our values, and we understand their values. And one of our best values here in America is free speech. We're allowed to say what we want to say, and we're allowed to speak up about injustices, and that's just how it goes. And if people don't understand that, that's something that they have to deal with. But, I just thought it was unfortunate for, both parties, and then you got people speaking when they don't know what they're talking about. But Daryl Morey was right. Whenever you see something wrong going on anywhere in the world, you should have the right to say that's not right, and that's what he did. And but again, when it comes to business, sometimes you have to tiptoe around things. But again, they understand our values, we understand our values, and here we have the right to speak, especially with the social media. We're going to say whatever we want to say when we want to say it.
And the threat to free speech is market. Sam, are you back?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, there you have it. Good for Shaq.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't, he's still tiptoeing around it too, but at least there's some acknowledgement. I mean, it would be, there's some acknowledgement that, like, look, we're just selling out our values. And, I mean, I think that at the very least, that's somewhat helpful, although maybe it makes it also, on some level, like, it's okay. It's okay to sell out your values if the money is right.
I mean, it's such a... I'm always remembering the guys, was it the 72 Olympics? The two black athletes who put up a Black Power fist. Their careers were hugely harmed in sports. And then there was another story of the Australian guy who, I forget how he did it, but he had solidarity with them. And he was done. I mean, he was completely kicked out of sports in Australia and didn't even have, like, any trajectory in politics. So, it's suppressing athletes' political expression is a long history.
Yeah. Should we play 7 before 8? Is that Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. So Kristen Nielsen is she is really full-time project of trying to rehabilitate herself. I think the best case scenario for her should be she gets on Dancing with Stars.
Oh yeah.
And then the other version should be that she just she's done professionally unless she goes into some type of like I think she should be working for some organization that's trying to help immigrant children, or maybe she just dedicates her life to finding those kids who are in the foster care system now and now appear to be potentially permanently separated, kidnapped from their parents. But here she is on the Fortune's Most Powerful Women Forum.
There was a policy change at DOJ that was called zero tolerance, that said now everyone crossing the southern border would be prosecuted. In order to do that, they needed children separated from their parents so parents could be prosecuted. In your role as the head of Homeland Security, you had to allow for your agents to separate children from their family. You made that decision in the spring of 2018. I'm asking you if you regret making that decision.
I don't regret enforcing the law because I took an oath to do that, as did everybody at the Department of Homeland Security. We don't make the laws. We asked Congress to change the law. Congress reviewed the law in 2006 and decided to continue to make it illegal to cross in that manner. What I do wish had worked a lot better is that the coordination and information flow were simply insufficient for that number of people coming. It's heartbreaking that any family felt at any time that they had to cross the border illegally, because this is a terrible, dangerous journey. It's terrible. So what I regret is that we haven't solved it, and what I regret is that that information flow and coordination to quickly reunite the families was clearly not in place, and that's why the practice was stopped through an executive order.
She's a psychopath.
Yeah. I mean, I was just following orders.
Right.
And then also there was some measure of incompetence that had nothing to do with me. You know, Brian Beutler had an interesting comment about Bill Taylor, who is this career diplomat who, if you look at the timeline and just the context of his opening testimony, here's a guy who was brought in from the outside. These are career diplomats. They are not partisan. I think this guy was first appointed to the diplomatic corps by George W. Bush. And he's brought in. He's watching what's going on. He realizes in part of the process, like, oh my God, this is totally messed up. And he ultimately thinks that he's corrected it. Now, it's clear in the text exchanges that he's thinking that these texts are going to be subpoenaed. But, and it ultimately resolves itself. The fact that the money, the defense funds were held up gets reported, and the administration basically goes on to, who knows, Plan C or D or whatever it is. But the paradigm of a government official who gets into these positions, realizes what they're doing is really messed up, thinks that they can fix it. You know, that like, I can maintain, like, I can make sure that this does not go off the rails, out of a sense of, like, not loyalty to the president, but loyalty to the country. Like, this is, I can salvage this, right? Like, you know, the story that people used to tell about Mattis and and the generals, right? Like, well, I'm keeping them from the nuclear, button or whatever it is, and so therefore, do not blow the whistle. Right. When the scandal's revealed, they'll come in and they'll testify like this. Obviously, and they've done that. Kristen Nielsen is not that person. She is not that type of player. There is no indication that at any time she tried to do anything other than to fully execute these really inhumane directives that were coming from the DOJ. And to let her pretend otherwise would be criminal. And kudos to the folks at Credo. They've advertised on the show in the past. They've been a sponsor years ago. I've had Credo people on prior to that to talk about their political action. Here is the Credo Action Co-Director, Heidi Hess, protesting this Nielsen appearance as part of their, her program to, rebrand herself.
I'm just going to stay here until Kirsten Nielsen is done speaking. I'm just going to stay here until she's done speaking.
Why don't you let her stay?
Why don't you go someplace else?
Why don't you just let her stay?
Why don't you go someplace else?
She's just here trying to have some accountability.
Yeah?
Why don't you just let her stay? Don't touch me.
I'm not touching you.
Good.
But I can do anything I want to do.
Good.
Yeah?
So I'm going to stay. She's downstairs speaking right now, and I'm going to stay until she finishes. Kirsten Nielsen separated thousands of children from their families, and now Fortune and PBS are helping her rehabilitate herself. Hillary Clinton and Dream Hampton and Brandy Carlisle all refused to come today. They all refused to help Fortune and PBS be complicit in rehabilitating a child snatcher. And
Nice.
Good for her. Good for her. Some of those kidnapped children will never see their parents again. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And at the very least, by holding publicly these people to account, there's, maybe we'll see some type of, hopefully with the next president, some accountability and some ability to reunite these kids. It's sick.
It's so sick.
Here is some footage from the Queens rally that Michael was at, and Jamie was at, others. I was unable to attend, but this is an ad that came out of the Queens rally that Bernie is running. And is this the last? Is this the sort of his closing remarks?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah,
and this is taken
incredibly
off.
powerful.
I mean, and it's funny. I mean, I think there's some folks who maybe don't even know where this is coming from. This is kind of taken off on social media.
Here's that ad.
Take a look around you and find someone you don't know. Maybe somebody who doesn't look kind of like you. Are you willing to fight for that person as much as you're willing to fight for yourself? If you and millions of others are prepared to do that, not only will we win this election, but together we will transform this country.
I've been so critical of their ads.
Yep.
So I was so relieved to finally see. I mean, it was an incredibly powerful moment, but their ads, I think their ads have actually been a problem, and it's great to see, okay,
this is
fantastic.
sort of like we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, like bring back that Coke commercial version of Bernie, where you have a sense of all the benefits we see. I mean, this, and I think Bernie needs to do this too in the context of, and Warren too, to the extent that she's subscribing to Medicare for All in the next debate. They need to start laying out some of the material benefits in a sort of a more poetic but also a more enumerated way. You know, it's one thing just to say no copays and no at point of service, but I think you got to go in and you've got to say, like, no paperwork.
Yeah.
You are guaranteed your health insurance.
Do you miss? You're gonna miss waiting on the phone. You're gonna miss.
But it's
figuring
also
out,
for 25% of the population, or I should say 25% of the population every year. Even if you have health insurance, you lose it and have to get another one.
Yeah, I don't know if people saw this yesterday. The Washington Post Guild are losing their great health insurance for a less substantial Aetna package. So you can keep your health care unless your boss takes it
as long
away.
as your boss, yeah.
Which
Right, and the fact is, you know, by switching jobs or other, there's 25% of people in any given year will have to switch their health care. It creates a lot of anxiety, obviously, and it's usually not an upgrade.
Yep. Waste of time.
You sell the idea that, like, this is guaranteed. This is you don't have to ask any questions about it. It is guaranteed. I did get into a fight with a guy last night, and I maybe I was just tired, but I got into a fight about healthcare.
Torts.
And he was not a lawyer. He's like a sort of a vendor of sorts. And
take care of business. Yeah.
He was like, it was pretty. It got to the point where I was like, he was arguing that that we have the best health care in this country of anywhere. I've lived in 5 countries, that type of thing. And I was like, well, it depends on how you define best health care. And he's like, my grandmother came down here from Canada to get surgery because it was a 7-month wait. And I'm like, well, is your grandma wealthy? He's like, oh, yes. No, my family's very, very wealthy. And I was like, just started laughing because he thought that he must have thought that I was saying it in such a way like, are you wealthy enough to have this conversation with me? Because he's like, yeah, we're really, really wealthy. And
I will have you know that my opposition to everybody being covered is absolutely synchronized with my obscene family wealth, sir.
Exactly. And I said, well, your definition of the best healthcare in the world is whether we offer the newest, most innovative, most effective procedures for kings and queens who leave other places and come here. And I said, mine is overall health outcomes as measured by how many people actually get the health care they need and spread that out. And he's like, oh, that's not what good health care is.
Hey, let me ask you this. That sounds really nice in theory, but what about the princes who nearly are having a heart attack after being stuck at the Four Seasons at the Ritz-Carlton by MBS? Maybe they need to come to the Mayo Clinic and get de-stressed.
I said something to him that I don't remember saying to anybody in a long, long time, which is, we're just going to have to agree to disagree so long. And I walked away. Like I just didn't have the energy. It's too many blackjack tables out there here is a Tennessee county commissioner who is very concerned about what is happening to men's rights and to the wussification, apparently, of America. He's a little bit concerned about Pete Buttigieg running for president for all the wrong reasons, I would add. Here he is.
I got a queer running for president. I got a queer running for president.
Reactions from some in the crowd. One woman stood up, expressed her anger, and said this as she stormed out. Commissioner Hurst's comments continued, saying the white man has few rights.
I'm not prejudiced. But by golly, a white male in this country has very few rights, and they're getting taken for every day.
After the meeting, Hurst told me over the phone that he's entitled to his opinion and stands by it.
Now, if you don't, your kids and your grandkids it's going to pay for what we set back. That's
You know, Thanos is usually the bad guy because he has utilitarian views in the Marvel movies, not to be a dick or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, the White Men's Rights Relinquishment Act of 2015, of course, a little problem. Yeah, exactly. These are widely held beliefs.
White males can only speak in special white speaking zones.
You didn't build that? I built that.
Yeah. Got some white people speaking outside of the speech zone. Oh. Let's go clear that up.
Here's Larry Summers weighing in on what progressives are doing in terms of taxation. And just a stunning... it's just important. The reason why we play this, I mean, because honestly, it's like, why are we giving Larry Summers the time of day? He represents he's sort of like the front line of, I think, like the, well, I don't want to call it neoliberal because I get annoyed when that word is used.
I think it's one of the most appropriate uses
I was going to say that would actually
neoliberal.
be like a pretty to the T accurate use of that word.
In this instance, he is representing not just a neoliberal, but just really ultimately, the moneyed view on this.
Democrat,
and is going to
Wall Street, Harvard axis.
Exactly. And he is going to couch it in the context of a policy analysis. And here it is.
Of real estate, there's no reason why proper base broadening reforms of the income tax.
Oh, pause it. I'm sorry. Let's go back. Let's go back to the start. He is criticizing the really slamming Warren and Sanders' wealth tax proposal, and here it is.
Other provisions that are in the spirit of carried interest or exchanges of real estate. There's no reason why proper base broadening reforms of the income tax that reduce distortions within the income tax couldn't raise more than $2 trillion, which is over 10 years, which is substantially more than the revenue claims that are held out for the wealth tax. I think for progressives to invest their energy in a proposal that the Supreme Court has better than a 50% chance of declaring unconstitutional, that has very little chance of passing through the Congress, whose revenue potential is extraordinarily in doubt, for that to be the defining element in the progressive agenda in the United States, it seems to me is to potentially sacrifice an immense opportunity.
Oh my God.
Now, is this at which Peterson Institute is it? This is not the Pete Peterson Institute, right? Will you check on that? There's a couple of things to sort of break down here. First off, he's hiding the ball because the idea of a wealth tax is not only to get revenue.
Right.
I mean, he's suggesting you can do it much more efficiently through the income tax. Now, Warren and Sanders and people who support a wealth tax would have to be total idiots to think that you can't just raise that money through raising the income tax. The idea is that having people with that amount of wealth in society distorts our democracy. It distorts our politics. It creates instability in society. And the idea of a wealth tax is not just to raise money. It is to diminish the amount of money that is held in literally the hands of the number of people who could fit in a quarter of the conference hall I'm in right now. Not even a quarter. I mean, 200 or 300 people we're talking about. Maybe less even. And the idea that it can't pass through Congress, if it can't pass through Congress, then it doesn't pass through Congress. And the idea that there isn't a host of policies that are being talked about now that the Supreme Court isn't possibly going to strike down. We don't know that Medicare for All, or the public option for that matter, would be unchallenged by the Supreme Court. We have no idea. And then he makes this sort of straw man about it being like the central position. I mean, from a tax perspective, it might be, because you have both Warren and Sanders. That is like the most prominent tax they're talking about. But
Sanders talks about his Wall Street transaction tax a lot too. I mean, I don't even necessarily, and they both talk. In fact, all of the Democrats talk about repealing, the Trump top-end cuts. I just want to add, too, I mean, to the extent, and I think it's important to balance all of the variables from, the white identity politics of the Republican Party, but also this model that has produced such disastrous outcomes for many people across the country. Larry Summers is like the embodiment of it. I mean, he is at every single decision-making point of bad policy that Democratic administrations have done from the perspective of people who work in this country. He's also personally worked at DeShaw on Wall Street, big hedge, and I believe it was DeShaw. I think he worked there. And also, this is tangential, but I really would welcome that everybody should look up Larry Summers, World Bank, case for toxic dumping in the third world. And remember that he's angling for a job. He's angling for a job, too. Like, this isn't even like, those days are behind me and I'm just going to give you the straight dope. He knows that he's not getting a job in Sanders or Warren administration. In Warren's case, for very personal reasons. So this is very self-interested, even beyond being
He's
wrong.
been going out slamming Warren. I mean, Warren kept him from becoming the chairman of the Fed.
Yep.
Almost single-handedly prevented him from becoming chairman of the Fed. And that was a job, apparently, that he coveted like no other.
And I think he still does. And I notice, Ryan Grimm pointing this out, that when news outlets are saying, just giving you the, Summers says plan is unrealistic. And at the very least, you got to cover. I mean, I have, there is a huge personal dimension with Warren,
right?
All
right, let's play one more clip and then we'll do some IMs and then we'll get going. This Mark Zuckerberg on the Hill today. We'll probably have a little bit more about this tomorrow, but here he is being asked by Maxine Waters about the Facebook policy of not fact-checking ads. Now, well, let's hear the clip and then we can talk about it.
Having ads can be an important way to inject your message into the
Let me interrupt you for a minute. Are you telling me, I think as you said to me before, you plan on doing no fact-checking on political ads?
Chairwoman, our policy is that we do not fact-check politicians' speech. And the reason for that is that we believe that in a democracy, it is important that people can see for themselves what politicians are saying. Political speech is some of the most scrutinized speech already in the world.
Do you fact check on any ads at all?
Yes.
Describe what you fact check on.
Well, Chairwoman, actually, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. Facebook itself actually does not fact check. What we do is we have feedback that people in our community don't want to see viral hoaxes or kind of widespread.
So let me be clear. You do no fact checking on any ads. Is that correct?
Chairwoman, what we do is we work with a set of independent fact checkers who...
Somebody fact checks on
Washington
ads.
Free Beacon.
You contract with someone to do that, is that right?
Chairwoman, yes.
And tell me, who is it that they fact checked on?
Chairwoman, what we do is when content is getting a lot of distribution and is flagged by members of our community or by our technical systems, it can go into a queue to be reviewed by a set of independent fact checkers. They can't fact check everything, but the things that they get to, and if they mark something as false, then we...
All right, my
issue a
time
label.
has expired, and someone else will continue on this line of questioning.
I mean, first off, you're not censoring speech by having a banner under an ad with a refutation. I mean, you know, in part, what is problematic about political advertising in the era of no fairness doctrine, and it obviously didn't apply, is that there's no, you don't have the same ability to sort of like balance things out with two different arguments. And the idea that you wouldn't fact check politicians' ads doesn't mean you why can't you just flag it and say, our fact checkers found this to be false? Just a banner underneath. Click here for more information.
Well, you know that they don't want, I mean, because it goes to their...
They don't want to inhibit their ad revenue.
They don't want to inhibit their ad revenue, and they also don't want to acknowledge that they're a media company and not just like a social platform, whatever the hell that even means at this point. And the other thing, too, you know, I always say, to the extent that they have started to do this, they go to like right-wing think tanks on foreign policy, and all of a sudden, you know, really important reporting on, you know, U.S. Interference in Latin America, as an example, is obscured. And there's no doubt that because there is a far-right constituency, sure, like Brendan was just saying, they go to Free Beacon. Like, I mean, they don't want to take the responsibility, and then when they do, they go to all the wrong sources. By the way, Mark Zuckerberg has a hand in staffing Pete Buttigieg's campaign.
I have a buddy who was looking into sort of like Texas state races, and for a Texas House district, he said the spending for one candidate was nearly $15,000 on Facebook alone.
Yep.
Wow. And Zuckerberg, I don't know if you covered this yesterday or the other day. He was saying Facebook was founded on this idea during the Iraq War that we need to have other voices. He literally
during the
said
Iraq War, I wanted to figure out a new way to rate my classmates at Harvard.
Well, that's the thing, is that platform was not designed like that at all at that time.
It was literally to rate girls' hotness.
You could rate how hot they were and how good their position on Iraq was.
Yeah, it was like, are they a dime piece? And they know that the administration was lying on WMD.
But there was no, it was built to be for specific, you know, within specific colleges. We used to get a Facebook.
Yep.
In college, you get a book full of people's faces and names.
Yep.
And he just digitized that, basically.
Genius.
And there's a couple, people could search for it. I can't quite remember. Maybe it was Dara Lind who was there at, I think, Harvard at that time. It was like, the Facebook wasn't anything like a platform to express opinions about anything.
No, I mean, I was on it relatively early because it's so disgusting. Like, literally, it was like Harvard, then the Ivies, then they expanded it to like, you know, Stanford, and then they did like MIT, and then all of the small like liberal arts colleges in New England. Like, it was totally elitist in every way. So I was on it pretty early, and there wasn't even a news feed function. It was another way to, you know, basically like, essentially, if you didn't have somebody's phone number, you could connect with them that way. And it literally was like, the whole emphasis was on your personal page and, you know, what books are you reading or movies or sports you're into or whatever. There was no news aggregate feature at all, unless you wanted to use your personal page that way.
All right, we're going to go through some IMs and then get going. With so much news around Ukraine, it might be nice to get some perspective on what's going on there as far as political landscape and current conflicts. Would you have someone on like Andros Drabinsky on? This is from Bullprog. Yeah, well, look at there. I actually was thinking, I know someone who wrote a book about, yeah, that's a good idea. Local pizza. Mitch will say that because impeachment hearings were in secret, then the vote can be in secret, and whoops, the secret vote came up innocent. And before you say the actual vote on impeachment was open, I ask why you think Mitch cares. There will be more public, but I think he's going to come up with something procedural. Has Sam seen the What Do You Mean video made to appreciate him yet?
Oh, I don't know, but Sam, you actually should check it out. What Do You Mean is a small Australian channel, and she does like animations. It's actually a super good channel. Check it out. Oh, and the Thanos memes are in.
The YouTube, it's a YouTube channel?
Yeah, What Do You Mean on YouTube. She does a lot of good content. I'd check it out. There's a lot of super talented people in the community. The Thanos memes are here.
Yeah, Oliver _Eddie has one of you as Thanos. That's pretty funny, actually.
I got to watch this movie now.
Yeah. Bravo-matic. Hope you guys are getting up to speed on the Republicans' disruption of Representative Schiff's hearing. No. We'll look at that for tomorrow. Edward from Illinois. Hey, MR Crew. I have a question for you regarding where the Democrats should focus if they take the presidency in 2020. In Article 5, 3 judges on the federal bench are now Trump appointees, largely because the Senate under Mitch McConnell hasn't passed any major legislation other than tax cuts. How much time should the Democrats spend trying to appoint their own judges to the federal bench in relation to the major legislative progressive agenda that our country needs, like Medicare for all and environmental protections? I mean, first off, sadly, there's not going to be nearly the amount of vacancies that there were for Trump to fill.
Right.
So even if they couldn't move at the pace in which McConnell did, assuming that they take the Senate, they may not have to fill all of the vacancies that exist. But I mean, I think that should be a top priority. But I'm not convinced that you need to do one or the other exclusively. I think that's a choice that Mitch McConnell has made to just simply avoid doing legislation because they can't get anything passed. Republicans brought phones to the skiff. They need to be arrested. Tim Pool's Republicans' defense that the Ukrainians didn't know fell apart this morning.
The Brooks Brothers riot is trending, by the way, in relation to this skiff thing.
Really? What's going on? What? Oh,
Gates,
they brought...
Gates took a bunch of people to storm Adams' Schiff hearing.
Oh, I see. And did the Ukrainians didn't know fell apart because they brought in that Pentagon official who was... But that part of it doesn't even matter. I'm sorry. The fact that they incompetently communicated to the Ukrainians that we were withholding the money to leverage against them is not a defense that they didn't do it.
Not to be a dick or anything, but in a lot of movies, House oversight chairs are the bad guys. Like in Iron Man 2.
Last Prussian, have you listened to Edward Snowden on the Joe Rogan podcast? It was fantastic. I haven't.
That sounds good.
I will. Sam, will you be discussing your Tim Pool debate? Anne Ren Polly. I mean, maybe when I get back, I'll look into it a little bit more. But
Thanos. Do you see?
I've heard some stuff about Tim Pool that I cannot believe.
That he's
revenue
smart.
things.
Yeah,
Revenue. I have not heard that. I have not heard that. Tim Pool's mom. Tim Pool's mom. I'm not racist. I'm very pro-immigrant. But if the Democrats won't let me personally own slaves, then forget it.
And by the way, I'm a very non-racist person.
Comrade Koala, the guy who lived in 5 countries you were arguing with, did you share your experience of the Australian healthcare system versus the U.S. Healthcare system? I didn't. I forget about that. But when I was traveling in Australia, Big problem with my inner ear. Went to the doctor, I don't know, 8 times. Maybe it was $20 a visit. It was nuts. Noman Dent. Hello, Brendan, Jamie, Matt, Michael, Sam. On Monday, federal elections were held, and there were some positive and negative results. In the positive column, Aboriginal women Mumlika Kwakak, I can't pronounce that, won in Nunavut for the NDP. People's Party leader Maxime Bernier lost. That's right.
Former Dave Rubin guest.
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, Maxime had a bad result.
I thought the change that I felt in the air apparently didn't take place.
You know, you say I'm so stupid.
Do you remember when he was tweeting out all this stuff like, I can feel there's a sea change that's happening?
Oh yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, he was kind of like doing some kind of tarot card vibes for a couple of days.
Yeah, if people can find those tweets, please send them to me, and send them to us at majorityreporters@gmail.com. Or tweet them at me. That would be good to see. Although I'm blocked, so I can't see them. Max and Mary, this is the Stop Sanders election. The Democratic donor class isn't afraid of him losing the general. That would be great for them politically. Their fear is that he would win.
Yes.
I'm convinced the general doesn't matter to them.
I agree.
I think there's some truth to that. Asha, 94, not to be conspiracy theorist, but there have been 3 times when I've been unsubscribed to the Majority Report channel, YouTube channel. Someone could make the argument you're being shadow banned. It's hard to react to that without having my soundboard.
Long form fucking interviews.
Alex, thank you. In response to the Destiny debating Cole James Cash fiasco, where Destiny really showed his true colors, folks, we need to listen to our community. When people of different backgrounds call out behaviors, you need to step back and consider their feelings instead of digging in and triple down like the L and self-reflect. Take the L and self-reflect. Don't be like Destiny. Okay. Space Bear, are you taking T-shirt submissions ideas for your Mercy store? We've been waiting for it. Your merch. Yeah, you send them in. I don't know if we'll use them, but majorityreporters@gmail.com. Waterboat from Kashmir. Yesterday's hearings were heard on Kashmir. The person making the case for India literally does propaganda for a living at Times of India. She stated many lies and did a lot of appropriation, but her real sins, when she attacked Omar and Jayapal for pointing out the holes in her testimony, she literally called Ilhan Omar an Islamist on Twitter and retweeted some real Islamophobic crap about Omar hours after the tweet. In the meantime, the nightmare in Kashmir continues, and India and Pakistan inch closer to war. That's what I'm saying. Like, this could be, this is the, arguably the most dangerous place in the world for the world right now. And we don't have a president who seems to care.
No.
Or be engaged in this whatsoever. It's pretty stunning. All right, just 5 more. Bear Brains. Sam is inevitable. That's a Thanos reference. Slate Nate, new costume idea. Going to be the spirit from Medicare for All for Halloween. Hello, look at the actuarial table shows Social Security is not sustainable unless we mass genocide the older 50% of the population.
No, that doesn't work. Sam's made very much the opposite point about that in a very regular way.
No need for a genocide.
Yeah, there could be 50% more seniors and it would still work. God damn it.
Congressional Comic Book. Hi, Sam. Michael, is more of a question than a comment. I know you may be unfamiliar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, known as the MCU. So let's go over to DC, but prepare to clutch your pearls. Would either of you agree that Capitalist oppressors Thomas and Martha Wayne had it coming?
I think I know the reference, and yes.
That's Bruce Wayne's parents. They got killed in an alleyway.
Yeah, no, I think
when
Batman's parents.
Robbed.
Well, look, I don't really think that's
Class
like
war.
socially productive the way they went, but I would say I don't think they would be playing a constructive role in the current cycle. I think, yeah, I mean, You know?
Well, they had to die for Batman to live.
Yeah, but Batman then became like a fascist vigilante, so maybe they should have stayed around so he could have just like, I don't know, become like a MSNBC pundit or something.
Colorado guy, just want to do a shout out for ballotpedia.org, I should say, ballotpedia.org. It's a great resource to familiar yourself with your state and local ballot issues and candidates. Also shows public endorsed, et cetera, et cetera. Proposition DD in Colorado would legalize sports betting, and a tiny fraction of the revenue would be used to fund generic waterworks project. Vote no on Prop DD, fellow Coloradans. 3 more here. Strawberry Chaos. Hi, Sam. I wanted to announce that one of my Colorado Springs hometown villains, Will Perkins, who was a leading voice for Amendment 2 legislation that dubbed my Colorado the hate state for being discriminatory towards LGBTQ people in '92, has died. Not sad at all. Well, congratulations on that. That is, we leftists in the West should refrain from reducing divisions and oppression in India to Hindus and Muslims, because doing so obscures and harms social justice issues and movements more than it helps. The primary axis of oppression is that of the caste, and everything you've talked about, Kashmir, the killing of Muslims in Gujarat, the camps being set up, affect only Dalit, the umbrella term for the untouchable castes.
That's not exactly true.
Adivasa, indigenous people. Upper caste Muslims or Christians aren't in any way affected by what's reported in the media as violence against Muslims and Christians.
That's definitely not, and not only, that's definitely not exactly true. And Modi himself actually is lower caste and has risen in politics. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a huge, major issue in India, but there is that axis there that is also a part of it.
Snoozing Dawn. Today's update from the YPG. A car bomb was exploded in Islo's city center, a border city in Syria. The car had Turkish license plate. Many people were injured. Videos have emerged of Turkish-backed jihadists on their way to northeast Syria, just stating, "We will show you decapitated heads of Kurds in a few hours."
Yep.
And the final IM of the day. Sam, I agree to debate you. Oh, this is CT Stephen Scrouders. Stephen Scrouder. Sam, I agree to debate you as long as you stay in a head injury and are late for a chemistry final. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know